Welcome back to T. Watts and TR on the YouTube and podcast homes for BamaOnline.com. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BOL, alongside site publisher Tim Watts. Tim, we got some Iron Bowl leftovers to dig into. Might need a little mayonnaise to help get some of those sandwiches down after last Saturday in Auburn. We'll get into the Alabama-Georgia matchup coming up Saturday as well. Man, we got UA Hoops tonight in the ACC SEC Challenge. We've got our roundtable mailbag. We got a lot to do, Tim.
It's a busy time of year, isn't it? I mean, you
Yeah.
get all the sports, it is. I mean, it did hit me, Saturday night that after the Iron Bowl later, that was the end of the regular season. And it seems like it was long in some ways. I mean, how far along? I mean, it seems like South Florida was 2 years ago, right? Where we're at now. But also it was gone in a blink of an eye with the season. I'm not one of those guys. I had the guy sentimental on the message board that times always went fast when it came for college football to me. I don't know about you or other people. It's not because I'm older, but you get 12 games. In the NFL, you get 16, Major League 162, NBA 82, college basketball 35 games or so. It's just quick, fast, and in a hurry.
It just means more, and it just seems to go by faster, doesn't it? And we talked about that before and why I've become less and less of a countdown guy. I do the roster countdown, which I enjoy doing every summer, but it seems like as soon as I get done with that, I'm writing about either the Iron Bowl or an SEC championship game. Seems like nothing else happens in between. It's literally a vapor, the college football season. So, Tim, have you recovered from Saturday? We talked about Iron Bowl leftovers. Anything else? I've had some thoughts that have come to me since even Sunday, right? You think you process everything in the immediate aftermath of a game like that, but that's a game where it takes a couple of days to kind of get through everything you think you even saw.
Yeah, the second watch, and I know you actually have a great feature called Second Watch, but watching that game a second time, and you see a lot more because it happens again. That happens. It's intense. There's many small things. You go back and look at missed opportunities. On the touchdown, I don't know what you do there. You know what I mean? I don't know what you do. I watched the sideline for Alabama. I think it's the best. Some people lost their mind. Some people just stood there. You know what I mean? There's like a delayed reaction.
So take me through Tim Watts. The immediacy before the play, the mindset of Tim Watts, then as the play is happening, and then Tim Watts immediately post play. Give us a review of that, the sort of 20 to 30 seconds there.
Well, when I'm frustrated, I work, and that includes watching any sporting event. Last night I was cleaning. The Pelicans were blowing another game, and I was out there cleaning the kitchen, watching at it. I was cleaning my wife's back porch, which was a travesty. I was 6 inches deep in leaves. And
by the way, why does that word have to be travesty? Couldn't they have come up with something else? Timesty? Couldn't it be Timesty instead of travesty?
When I'm sweeping and hit something hard under those leaves, I'm wondering if it's a dead body. Like it wasn't just sweeping off the porch. So that's also where I smoke my cigar. So I had that nervous energy. But when after the bad snap, I didn't know what to say. I don't know what to feel. It's very, very similar to the 2nd and 26, right? Except it was 2 downs instead of 4. But I will say when Jalen dropped back to pass, he was looking for something. That's what I was thinking. Like, this dude is looking for something. There's not going to be some pass thrown up into a jumble of 3 or 4 people, and everybody started saying Hail Mary, which it absolutely wasn't. He was looking for something. And when he threw it, he had confidence, and I heard him go, ugh. I saw him put that muscle in it. And then Bonds, I'm a huge Bonds guy. I've loved him ever since. But the biggest thing with Bonds was that track time that he had good hands, track time, but how quickly would he adjust to being a wide receiver? And tip of the hat to, Holman Wiggins, who, you see that guy make that catch, the slot, the
high point it. Yeah.
Created
enough separation.
Hey, that guy, they can cry about that crap all they wanted. He was holding his arm.
It's in college football, especially.
He was holding his arm. That was
it's
MMA.
So
you a professional catch is what it was.
Yeah.
It
2 feet down too.
Catch. Yeah. And the thing we're not really talking about as much, and I've watched it so many times before it hit me, is that Jalen threw him open. Jalen threw to a corner he wasn't in. He wasn't standing back there. He threw him, and then, of course, he went and got it. So and I'm watching the game by myself. Most people don't like to be around me. And you know what I mean? When I was younger, I didn't mind acting a fool. But as I got older, I was like, hey, I'm a little too old to be smoking a cigar and kicking stuff. I'll just do it in my thing. But yeah, my daughter was excited. And I've never seen her excited about a game. Now, she wouldn't have been depressed if they lost. She's that kind of girl. But she was like excited, like eyes brimming. And I mean, it was, I really don't know what. I called some of my, a couple of my closest friends. You've always got the guy saying, we're going to lose at kickoff. And then the guy, don't worry, we're going to win. My best thing was the 2 texts from now, all my friends, we don't talk trash. I mean, I don't talk trash. I don't like to hear it. I go straight personal. I'm starting talking about their mamas. So we just skip all the trash talk. But the 2 I do talk to, both text me and said, I knew that was going to happen on that play. And I cussed them out. I was like, get the heck out of here. You didn't know that. You did not know that. Get the heck out of here. No way.
There's no in between, right? With fans, they're either a fatalist that we're going to lose from the opening snap or the first sign of any type of adversity. We're losing. This is the Jordan Hare thing again.
That's the people.
And then there's the fan that when it's all said and done says, had them all the way. I had it. I knew it. No worries. Right.
Yeah, that is it. Now, my wife is a super optimistic person. She's like, it's not over. It's not over. Down 4 to basketball game with 0.8 seconds. 0.8 seconds left. She'll think that you still got a chance in that game. Me, I'm more of a realist. I go with the sense of the play, like, oh, no, the bad snap. Oh, this, so I'm kind of going with him, but nothing's worse than the first quarter gave up an 18-yard run and like, why is he still as the defensive coordinator? That guy catches all my smoke. And I love some of them. They're some of my best friends.
The far friends. Yes. You got your far friends. FAHR.
Yes, that is like instantly. And then later on, I love Steele. And you saw a lot of that this year with the Tennessee game. I hate Steele. I love Steele. You saw that the LSU
game. They love second half Steele. First half
they,
Steele that some of the fans aren't big on.
That was just, I will say, I think it's time we address the voodoo. And I said this in my Nuggets post is on my game thoughts, but I think voodoo now goes both ways there, right?
Well, I mean, if you're Auburn, could there be 2 more crushing defeats on your home field than what Alabama has handed you each of the last 2 times it has been in that stadium?
No. And we talked about these yesterday on the recruiting show, but if you're a coach for Auburn, I think you could have handled a 28-17 loss. I think you could have handled a 31-20 loss. I think you could have handled that because you're like, this is why we need you. But to win for 59 minutes and some change and then have to go in there and tell some 18-year-old kid, that was a devastating blow. I don't know if anybody. I mean, you've been in games when nobody. I'll tell you this: nobody ever gripes about the Bama Clemson blowout in 18, right?
No,
it didn't dig in.
I do because I went all the way out there for it. Yeah, that was a long way to go to take one like that. But yeah,
but I'm saying people, you never see them gripe about that game on the message board. It was maybe the best college team in the history of offensive football. That roster is a friggin' NFL. It was unbelievable. I mean,
if it wasn't, the one with Deshaun Watson might have been. Right?
This is freshman Trevor Lawrence. You know what I mean?
You had Trevor Lawrence.
I mean,
that's after you saw Deshaun in that team. Yeah.
But the fact they blew him out, you didn't really care about it. You don't talk about it. But every close game you remember. So I do believe it's better to get blown out and just not even watch the fourth quarter than to lose in that fashion. So
it is. I guess I can see both ways of that. And you know how this works. And you said it too. It's hard after a loss like that. But coaches, they say, if we just had you on that last play or in that fourth quarter when we couldn't get into the end zone in the red zone on offense, if we got you, we score a touchdown there and it's 28-20 instead of 24-20.
Yeah.
And then that final sequence, if we got you, you know how that works.
That's fair. But again, that's the same pitch. Up, down 55-0 if we got you. Up 55-0 if we got you.
But it's just one play. That's how close we are, Tim. We're just one play away.
It's an unbelievable game. I mean, I'm surprised, again, on watching it again, that Alabama was losing. I mean, I felt like Auburn, and look, I'm going to give Auburn some credit. I think Auburn had a great game plan, and I think they played well, and I'm not taking anything from them. but they forced Alabama to miss some opportunities, and Alabama just missed some opportunity.
Well, the holding call at 7-0 when Kendrick Law's touchdown comes back. That's huge because if it goes to
Yeah,
14
that
to
was
nothing there in the first quarter, does Auburn stay patient, Tim, and continue to try to run the football?
no,
I think
no.
that whole sequence, not just the hold, but the shank punt, then you give Auburn the football out at the 30, and then Auburn looks around and says, it's still only 7-0. We don't
Yeah,
have to do anything different than what we thought we were going to do coming into this game. Then they get that run game going, and
that's
that just totally changed the complexion of that game.
that's the thing with sports that are so emotional. Like basketball is that way, and football is that way more than anywhere else I'm aware of. But Uncle Mo flips, and it's hard to get it back because you're right. It's 14-0, coasting through a game, 2 easy touchdown drives, and then a penalty, a shank punt, a long run, a good finish, touchdown, 7-7. All of a sudden,
Now you're playing 4 quarters.
we got a different ball game because you're right. We got a team that didn't pass for 100 yards that's now behind the clock. They're down 14-0. And you're right. How long can they afford? Because if they're 14-0 and don't score, I mean, Alabama's looking for, Alabama's out there, shark, blood in the water, sharks trying to put that thing away. So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't take much.
It doesn't. And you're right. I mean, Auburn in the last 2 Iron Bowls hadn't thrown for over 100 yards in either of those games, but they have run for a combined 560 plus. So that's
Yeah.
kind of
And they
the
rushed for
equalizer.
200 against Georgia too. I mean, they've got the Jaquez Hunter's a really good runner.
Mm-hmm.
Robbie Ashford didn't have a game. I've seen him have better games, but he's kind of that threat when you come in there.
Peyton Thorne hurt him in the second half with quarterback draw, zone read keep.
Yeah, and those
That
were good.
dude's
Hey,
smart in that offense.
those were
He knows
very
how to
good.
run it.
Those were very good play calls too. So,
Mm-hmm.
Auburn
Yeah.
got some credit. Auburn has always been Hugh Freeze and Gus Malzahn have always been a good matchup for Alabama and Georgia, oddly enough, because of the defense they run and the offenses they run. I've always felt it was kind of a little bit, and people talk about that. College coaches talk about that every year about the matchup. It's not a good matchup for everybody, or they'd have better records in their career. But against Alabama and against a Kirby Smart, I mean, they're more competitive than they usually are. And, again, Jordan Hare, I expected Alabama to win. I had them predicted to win by 20. But I did say the whole year this was the game that worried me because it's Jordan Hare.
Yeah.
It's a mess down there. I mean, I wouldn't say there was any voodoo with Alabama's last 2 wins, but I saw that somebody posted the scores out in Tuscaloosa. It's like 36-20. Is that right? And then in Auburn, it's 28-28. So
yeah,
decidedly,
it's a lot tighter.
Yeah, it's decidedly.
My thoughts right before that snap, Tim, was I got to do instant analysis right after this.
Mm-mm.
So that was my thoughts. And then also second watch for Sunday. How many people are going to watch a second watch if Alabama loses that game?
Yeah, I've never seen the kick six twice. I mean, even if they try to show it to me all week, I didn't
you turn your head.
I didn't see that damn thing one time this week. I promise you. If I look up and Alabama's kicking a field goal, I click the channel.
Oh man,
I go straight to Twitter, see what the Braves are trying to sign.
Speaking of the live streaming we do, we certainly appreciate your comments and questions here as we are live on this Tuesday morning. Tex Hyder checking in, our guy Jamie M checking in here in the comments. Bob Rutherford, welcome to all of you
guys. Thank you
to the program. So let's get into Georgia a little bit, and I'll start with previous matchups between these teams. You talked about it earlier. I mean, the 2nd and 26 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium and the 2018 College Football Playoff National Championship game will always stand alone, not just for this series, but when you're talking college football history from that perspective. But for you, are there some Georgia games other than that one that maybe stand out? Going back to even the 80s and 90s. I mean, we are that old, Tim.
Yeah, to me, the games, I don't know if the games just lately have been at a next level, but how about the year Jalen Hurts comes in? I mean, literally, the thing about Alabama, they have so many situations that if you made them a movie, you would say that's bullcrap. That kid did not stay an extra year to back up a first-round pick and then come in and be the hero in the SEC championship game. But I'll never forget Jalen Hurts coming in for an injured Tua. The batted pass against Georgia when they were threatening to score and take the lead
2012.
late. I always remember going to Georgia, the Scott Cochran. They're wearing black because they're going to a funeral. I'll never forget Scott Cochran saying that. You know why they're wearing black? They're going to a funeral. That game was very intense. Did a great job too, shutting down Nick Chubb until there's a great story about Nick Chubb getting that long run, and Ashawn and those guys were going, "Who blew it? Who blew it?" And they said Reuben, and Reuben's hiding from them. Those D linemen are like looking for Reuben. What'd you do? So great stories there. The national championship game they lost. I mean, the games recently have all been fantastic. I mean, people will forget Alabama was winning that national championship game against Georgia. They lost.
Fourth quarter.
That's how good these games have been. And I don't say that lightly because Georgia, to me, has always been a good football program. They've never been at the level they are now. They're at a different level with Kirby Smart. But they were always competitive in the SEC championship game and getting good recruits. I think Kirby just ramped it up, kind of like learning from Nick or –
yeah, I guess I go back to the high school days, man. Vince Dooley at Georgia, Ray Perkins at Alabama. Of course, before that, Bear Bryant. But, man, my senior year of high school, 1985, Alabama beat Georgia in Athens on Labor Day night. Mike Shula to Al Bell.
I remember that.
Remember that one?
Al Bell.
And then in the 90s, you had some classic sort of matchups, especially in 94 in Tuscaloosa, the Jay Barker game there where Alabama got behind to Eric Zeier, comes back at home. That was one of the wildest environments I'd ever encountered at Bryant-Denny Stadium there in 94. The blackout game that you mentioned, Alabama goes over there after hammering Clemson in Atlanta, goes to Athens and does a number on Matthew Stafford, Sean Marino. I was on the field for that game. They didn't have a spot for me in the press box for that game because we were still at the time internet guys. I remember and so I was on the field with Josh Pate. Josh Pate was shooting video down there. I was just on the field, and that was incredible to be on the field when Alabama was delivering those big shots early in that game. And I caught myself just looking at the crowd. Every time Alabama would score, Julio in the corner of the end zone, those type of plays, I would just look at the crowd and the disbelief on the faces in Sanford Stadium that night. I'd never seen it.
That was a good Georgia football team.
Very good.
That's the thing about it. These are good teams that play each other. A very heated contest for the most part. And again, I think we're going to get a pretty good one on Saturday. I don't know about everybody else. I'm just excited to see this Alabama team here and rather comfortably. They had, regardless of the Auburn loss, they had won the West and, have some really good wins under their belt. I know a lot of the stuff's just caught up in the playoffs. I haven't really got caught up in those playoff rankings. Have you? Because there's nothing you can –
I haven't because I've kind of been looking at this game, especially with the thought that Alabama would beat Auburn. So that thought took a momentary respite there late on Saturday evening. But once Alabama got through Auburn, Tim, my perspective of this game Saturday has been it is a college football playoff game.
No, I agree.
I don't need the TV show tonight to tell me that this is an important game. To me, it's a college football playoff game. Now, where it gets interesting is if Alabama wins Saturday and the CFP somehow still keeps the Crimson Tide out.
And Georgia out, right?
Well, Georgia, I would think, would be out. Maybe Georgia stays in.
Seriously,
but if you have a scenario where you don't have an SEC team in this playoff, what's the validity level of a playoff?
Also, you'd be looking at a Georgia team whose only loss is Alabama, who's a top 5 team at that point.
Yeah.
And then you'd be looking at an Alabama team left out whose only loss is to a top 5 Texas.
I don't know how you keep Alabama out instead of Georgia, though, when Alabama in the last 31 games would have handed Georgia its only 2 losses.
No,
I know you're not supposed to go back to previous years and all that, but that's the reality.
I think in almost any other year, if Alabama beats Georgia, both of them are locks to be in. Yeah. That's what's crazy. I'll tell you this: if that were to happen, which I don't think it will, but I definitely could be wrong. I don't trust that committee.
Alabama's going to go from 8 to 4 if everybody else wins.
I'll tell you what we should do.
I think they should.
Well, if Georgia and Alabama don't make it, you should take the other 2 teams that don't make it. You should play that Final Four and see who gets the highest.
Play it like the NIT. That's what it'll
Yeah,
be. Without
yeah.
the SEC, you'll have
Dude,
the
you can
college
have
football
Ohio
playoff
State.
NIT.
You can have Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia in this wild scenario in the NIT bracket. You know what I mean? That would be, and hey, where would the viewers be?
You're talking about 13 of the last 17 national champions coming from the Southeastern Conference. And you're going to keep that
Well, I think
league
that's
out?
part of the,
You
yeah.
better have the Chiefs and or the Niners as one or two of the teams in that 14 playoff if you're
Look,
going to keep the SEC out.
I had no idea that Texas was possibly getting boxed out. That's how little I paid
Could.
attention to it.
Yeah.
I have just assumed Texas was a lock in, but
to me, Florida State should already be out.
See, that's what I don't understand.
I don't care what happens in the ACC championship game.
If you look, that's a big loss. They can't compete with any of those other teams.
Oh.
I mean, Billy had them beat. Billy Napier and them had them beat. I felt this week. If they'd had Graham Mertz, it was really going to be a problem. Now, kudos to the job that Noel's staff has done. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Without Jordan Travis, they're an L
tragic
waiting to happen. And I hate it because I like Jordan Travis a lot.
Yeah, he was a good football player. And hey, Mike Norvell's did a terrific job there. I mean, 2 years ago, I think people were laughing, or last year maybe laughing about that he was still there. He wasn't going to make it. So to have them in the playoff discussion at all, they've got a good win over LSU. I still think it's a really good football team despite a few losses. I mean, you look at LSU, who has 3 losses, and they're to who? Bama, FSU, and Ole Miss, right? 3 top 8 to 10 losses. I mean, that's how good. Now, next year, that's what I was saying. In the top 12 scenario, is LSU in next year in that same. That's, we're going to discuss Alabama's schedule later. That's what I was wondering. You get those 3 top 10 losses, have a few good wins.
I think in that scenario, if you're a 3-loss team in most years, and this year's the exception, even for the 4 team, to have this much of a logjam in the top 8, we haven't had that.
Never.
But it's perfect transitioning into the 12 because it solidifies a case to go to 12, even though it's the exception, not the rule.
I think they're happy with that. I think there's
I think
there's a mindset with this committee that, well, if we get it wrong this year, don't worry, we go to 12 next year.
The committee would very much like to see Georgia win Saturday. Just put it that way. Because if Georgia wins,
absolutely, yeah.
And then you're totally off the hook.
Yeah, we're not saying a conspiracy, but absolutely, it makes their job
if I was on that committee, I would want Georgia. I would be, let Georgia win. So I
would want Georgia to win and FSU to lose, and then the cards fall where they may. We kind of got what we want. We got the Michigan, we got the, we got the Pac-12 in there, we got Texas, and we got Georgia. That's as easy as it's going to get.
Yeah. Sam here watching the program with us in the comments says, if Bama beats Georgia, that would give them 4 top 25 wins. What other team in the top 25 would have that resume? Well, I know Oregon wouldn't, even with a win over Washington in the Pac-12 game Friday night. That would not certainly be the Ducks. For me, again, I know you're not supposed to look at the history of a league or teams in a league or teams in college football. But if you're going to figure out a way to keep Georgia and Alabama out, if Alabama wins on Saturday, you don't, to me, have much of a playoff.
Now, can Georgia lose and get in?
Well, that's what I'm. That's
another. That's another, because then you've set this. Washington's ahead of Oregon, Texas ahead of Bama. I don't see how you could put Georgia.
I already saw Georgia put 60 on Oregon, a year ago or so. And I know, again, I'm not supposed to go back to previous seasons, but I
mean, even this
I don't
season,
need to see Georgia, Oregon again.
If you just need a resume this year, if you just need to eye test this year, I don't see any way in the world you're saying Georgia's not a top 4 team. I don't think there's many people that are going to argue Alabama's not a top 4 team. I mean, they're definitely a top 4 or 5 team. You can put them over Washington and FSU out of the gate. That puts them at 6 right out of the gate. So they're definitely in that discussion. I'm not sure everybody feels the same about other teams.
So when you look at this matchup for Saturday, man, all the coaching staff ties with Kirby, Schumann, Muschamp, Scott Cochran, roster ties too. I mean, Jermaine Burton coming over from Georgia to Alabama, Trez Marshall coming over. Those kind of storylines, I was asked about it on a radio show this morning. They're unavoidable, with not only those connections, but when you watch these two teams play, you feel like you're watching in some ways the same team.
Yeah, I mean, when you look and I mean, you got teams that are similar. I mean, it's not surprising that Nick Saban and Kirby Smart are building the same type program, and when they do, you go after the same type players when you recruit. Um, I mean, Carson Beck, Georgia's quarterback, was committed to Alabama at one point. I mean, even looking at the quarterback, that's a funny thing. Like the quarterbacks, we're so used to the dominoes falling, as I call it. Number one commits, number two commits, the dominoes fall. But you look at this game, you have a Texas former commitment, playing a former Alabama commitment. I mean, you got quarterback, that hodgepodge that goes with that. So obviously, Beck was committed to Alabama for a little while after being committed to Florida for baseball, if I recall correctly. Has done a real look. There's been some guys this year, and Beck's kind of got lost, in my opinion. He's got lost in the Jaden Daniels and the Jalen Milroe love, because Jaden Daniels is, to me, he's just the biggest difference maker at the quarterback position easily this year. And then you got Jalen Milroe, who had one of the best glow ups in the country, right? You go from,
Sure.
the Texas game to here. He's been really phenomenal. But Carson Beck's done a really good job with that offense. He makes good plays. I mean, a lot of the criticism of he doesn't see a lot of pressure is true, but a lot of that, Georgia's got a pretty good offensive line. I mean, it's not like nobody's
Really
trying
good.
to get to Carson Beck. Georgia's got some big dudes over there laying helmets on them. So a good matchup. I do think this is a matchup Alabama's more comfortable with, because we said this all year. You face your nightmare offensively in Tennessee and LSU. You got a coach that's going to try to scheme you to death, and he's really good at it in Josh Heupel, and you got a very unique quarterback with a skill set you can't really practice for. You know what I mean? So in LSU, so this is an easier matchup for Alabama as far as just helmet to helmet and get it in front of somebody. But obviously, Georgia's a super talented team.
Sam also checking in here. We're going to get to our roundtable mailbag coming up in just a little bit, but Sam is timely with this because I was headed here next. When you talk about matchups on both sides of the ball for this game Saturday, to me, it comes down to sort of some wild card players. And I still consider Jalen one of those because of his legs. And I think about who Georgia has played to this point in the season. Has Georgia seen anything like this Jalen Milroe? And the Jalen Milroe I'm talking about is since the bye week. Alabama came back from the bye week. Since then, the last 4 games, Jalen Milroe has rushed for nearly 300 yards and 7 rushing touchdowns in that span. So he's that guy for me when talking about the Alabama offense going against the Georgia defense. I'd have Kendrick Law in there too, is sort of a utility player that can be very impactful. And then for Georgia, Brock Bowers status. What's that going to be for Saturday? And you want to talk about guys that Alabama hasn't really seen like this season. I would say he's that guy.
Yeah, I mean, Bowers is a very unique guy when it comes to, we mentioned Jaden Daniels at quarterback. I mean, he's obviously the best tight end in the country. I don't really consider him a tight end. I consider him a wide receiver or, a wide out. Everything he does, he's not your traditional guy. Very similar to Travis Kelce, almost. Line him up anywhere. And it's all that plus when he runs like a tank. I mean, when he takes off, there's like a protective shell that covers him. He like hunches his shoulders. It ain't easy to tackle, big boy. You know what I mean? So you got that. He's got tremendous ball skills. So that's certainly an advantage for them, but this advantage you're expecting. I think Brock's going to get his in this kind of game. I think for, as far as the advantages and disadvantages, Georgia, it's not really sacking the quarterback like they have in the past as much. They're down a little bit. So maybe that offensive line, which is improved for Alabama, the key to me, the advantage is keeping them away from Jalen. Now, I know Kirby Smart's the same thing as Nick Saban. They don't want to use a spy. That gives them a disadvantage either against the run or against the pass. When you've got a guy just isolated to the quarterback, you are losing somewhere in your secondary, losing somewhere on your front line. So that's going to be one difference advantage for Alabama, is taking one of those guys out of the box. And Alabama doesn't have to worry about that with Beck as much, with him being pretty much a drop back passer. I mean, he can scramble. He's not a bad athlete, but he's a guy that's probably just going to drop back and throw the ball.
I would think so. He's a pretty good athlete. And Carson Beck, by the way, coached by the same guy in high school who coached Derrick Henry, Bobby Ramsey, down in the Jacksonville area, coached Henry at Yulee, then moved to Mandarin and coached Carson Beck. So interesting tie there. But I think if you watch that Auburn tape and you saw what Peyton Thorne was able to do with his legs, not that you're going to feature Carson Beck as a runner, but I'm going to guess you got a quarterback draw in this week. you probably have the opportunity for Carson Beck to keep off of some zone read action. But you're right.
But it's not,
I
yeah.
think that's part of it too. Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell coming off the edges, and can they get pressure? Um, because I don't know if Georgia's seen that kind of tandem. Now they saw a little bit of it from Tennessee with James Pierce Jr. and Tyler Barron, but I think this is another level of edge ability when you talk about what Alabama's got.
Yeah, and with Beck running, I mean, it was much different with the Stetson Bennett, who could pull the ball down and scoot a little bit. You know what I mean? You know, he didn't. I don't know why, but I was always a Stetson Bennett guy. I think the fact how he ended up his career and how he got there. I mean, he was cut. You know, I mean, he was told to leave. You know, and ended up winning a couple of national championships. So he is the underdog role, but he can run. Now he can run. Now Beck, I don't expect as much. I think he's more of a Greg McElroy kind of scramble when I gotta. So you don't really have to spy him out. You know what I mean? But I
No.
think with Alabama, you try to stop the run game. Georgia's not as good as they're better in the past than they have been, and they're not as good in the run as they have been. It's probably a fair statement. So I think you try to eliminate, make them a passing game, and they've got good. You know, they throw the ball around a lot. When you look at the guys that have caught the ball, it's kind of similar to Milroe and their box stats. You're seeing 8 to 10 guys catch passes every game, which is similar to what Milroe does.
Yeah, it's not just the Bowers show when he's been healthy. I mean, they added a couple of transfers and Ra Thomas and Dom Lovett from the SEC. And then Lad McConkey, his health for this game too is up in question to go along with Ra Thomas. So that's what you're going to have your eyes on initially Saturday is the availability of Bowers and Thomas
Yeah.
and McConkey because it's very important. Tim said it. Not as dynamic at the running back position, Georgia this year. The production's still not bad for Edwards and Milton and those two. But they've got some wild card types too, in addition to Bowers. A guy like Dylan Bell and some of these guys that they utilize. Mike Bobo's done a really nice job. I know he's caught hell from that fan base, especially in the first half of the season, but they seem to have really, like Alabama, found themselves more and more as the season progressed. Thank you, Sam. He says great assessment. So
Appreciate
he's
it, Sam. And you know, one more note on their offense. It's not they're building an offense around Brock Bowers. They've got tight ends behind him. They've got some highly recruited guys.
Oscar Delp.
Absolutely. You know, they got a couple of guys last year. They've got some good guys that fit into their system. They're obviously not Brock Bowers. You know, that's a hard thing, but it's not like they're just doing this because, you know, like LSU's running an offense now that you can't really duplicate. You can't go say, hey, you can't go, hey, we're going to run that play where you scramble for 85-yard touchdown. You know,
where's our Jaden Daniels scout team quarterback? Get him out there.
Yeah. So Georgia's offense is built around the tight end. In fact, there were years they signed more tight end than wide receivers probably. So, you know, it's more than that. You've got to account for that tight end, whether it's Brock Bowers or whoever it is. They've got some really talented tight ends. And they went to the system a while back. They almost abandoned the wide receiver, went straight to tight end. You know, they had Darnell Washington. They had Eric Gilbert at one point. I mean, those were 2 5-star guys. There's a reason Jermaine Burns left. You know what I mean? He wasn't a tight end. He didn't get as many looks as he thought. And still one of the craziest stories. We talked about it yesterday. Dude beat Alabama national championship, was in the locker room with Alabama a week later. What up, boys?
Lining up his apartment in Tuscaloosa from the locker room. Yeah.
In
Indianapolis.
Crazy scenarios. But yeah, Georgia's definitely got some talented tight ends on that roster.
And they do. And with that, it'll be interesting to see the approach that Kevin Steele and this defensive staff chooses to take. Do you go with a bigger front, especially on early downs, because you're probably going to be in that nickel package with 5 defensive backs? Do you have 3 defensive linemen and one of those outside linebackers, and then try to get into a situation where you can get Turner and Braswell on the field together? Georgia, with the way it has versatility because of Bowers in large part, but also a couple of those other tight ends, they can put you in a tough spot as far as being a little light against the run or maybe being heavy enough against the run, which exposes you to some matchup issues with those utility type players.
And there's a couple guys you got to watch. I'll tell you one thing that keeps a defense honest. They don't get praised enough for their reverses.
Yes.
You know, Lad McConkey and Bowers. I mean, you don't want that. You know what? Those they keep you honest. You can't really come flying in.
You saw Auburn score on one last week.
Absolutely. So they've got an offense, like you said. Mike Bobo's did a good job of developing. And I think Beck, we said this before, Milroe, we said this early in the year about Milroe. You can't get, it doesn't matter how old you are, how long you've been on the team. Experience really is a difference maker, especially at the quarterback position. And I think you're seeing that with Carson Beck. I think you're seeing that with Jalen Milroe. I think you're seeing them really improve, and I mean, they're no longer their first year starter. They're clearly in their second season with these playoffs coming.
Yeah, when you think about it from this perspective, Carson Beck, same class as Bryce Young. So this isn't a first or even second year guy. It's a guy
Yeah,
that's been around for a while in that Georgia system.
and
Hey,
that's
Tim,
go ahead.
before we get into some hoops talk, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this 2024 schedule for Alabama and really
I
the
don't want to.
SEC in general.
No,
And you knew it was going to be tough, right? Not just for Alabama, but for SEC teams across the board with Texas and Oklahoma coming in. But now that you see it like on paper or on a content item, it really hits you different, doesn't it? I mean, when you see the lineup with some specific dates,
yeah. I
it
mean,
goes to another level.
I was in a good mood, and Charlie Potter, our beloved Charlie Potter, posted that yesterday, and I was like cussing him under my breath.
Potter's such a hater, man.
I
He'll
was
do
like,
that.
dude, you've ruined my day. What is
Yeah.
this? What is this that you've shown us? But yeah, it's brutal. I mean, I tell you this from the perspective of you want to get in the playoffs with that schedule, you're definitely happy they're going to 12, right? And it's not just them. I mean, we're looking at Georgia's schedule. There's a lot of tough schedules coming up. So having the comfort of, we went from having to be undefeated to be in a national championship game, then to one loss. And now we're going to be looking at some 2-loss champions at some point in the future. But yeah, break that schedule down for us, and
Yeah, Alabama's 2024 football schedule as it stands right now. Charlie had that update for us yesterday at Bama Online. Open with Western Kentucky on August 31st. September the 7th, South Florida visits Tuscaloosa as part of that 2-for-1 that the Crimson Tide has with the Bulls. Then on September 14th, Alabama goes to Camp Randall, takes on Wisconsin up in Madison. 2 weeks later, Georgia visits Tuscaloosa. Now, there is a 2 week gap there between Wisconsin and Georgia. I'm guessing that either Missouri, South Carolina, or Vanderbilt that are TBD currently are going to plug into September 21st. So I'm not thinking you're going to have a bye week before Georgia because I think that bye week is probably still going to occur before LSU. That would be my guess. We'll
so
see.
you're thinking possibly Wisconsin, Missouri, Georgia back to back to
Could
back?
be. Yeah. Could
That's not
be.
fun. That's
It
not as
could
much
be.
fun
I
as it
would
seems.
think it's either Missouri or South Carolina because coming off that road game at Wisconsin, I would think Alabama would be at home for the next two, but who knows? Alabama might be on the road at Vanderbilt September 21st. So still some things, some blanks to fill in here. September 28th, Georgia and Tuscaloosa. October the 19th at Tennessee. November 9th at LSU. Mercer in Tuscaloosa on November 16th. Oklahoma in Norman. That could be icy. You talk about a weather game in late November, traveling to Norman on November the 23rd, and then the Iron Bowl set for November 30th. Again, to be determined at this point. Missouri at home, South Carolina at home, Vanderbilt on the road. But man, what about those road games? At Wisconsin, at Tennessee, at LSU, at Oklahoma.
It's ridiculous, and I know other people are, this is the SEC, so it's not like other people. I mean, Georgia's going to be thrown, they're going to be thrown a completely different level with their schedule. Alabama, I mean, it's going to be what we thought it was. We've always thought it was the best conference. I mean, I don't see any real breaks. I mean, you can't tell me Missouri's a break game. I mean, this is the borderline top 10 team. Even going to Kentucky, people kind of overlooked that Alabama win at Kentucky, including myself. But that was a heck of a win when you look at how they did it, dismantled the team that went and beat Louisville, just a few weeks later. Almost lost the coach, kept a coach. So this is not going to be for the faint of heart, and it's going to be good with having a little leeway not to have to go undefeated or even win loss. It's going to be a monster's road. Now, I do think Alabama should bring back a fair amount of offense, and that gives them a little bit of advantage because now you've got a quarterback who's been to Auburn, and again, you've been to Auburn, you've been to LSU, you've been to Tennessee, you're a seasoned veteran, right? Once you've been through that, and so that will help them. But I mean,
Yeah, and looking at how this lays out now, there are some gaps like between Georgia and Tennessee and also between Tennessee and LSU where perhaps you could have a second bye week. I think that would be preferred by SEC coaches given the uptick in the competitiveness that is about to be on the table within the league. But boy, regardless, also from a fan perspective, you talk about expensive trying to travel with your
Yeah.
football team. And then with the possibility still, Tim, of an SEC championship game, of an expanded playoff. If you're playing in that first round and looking at following your team throughout the course of the playoff, boy, I hope you got rewards points on
Yeah,
that
those
card.
streaks of 282 games in a row that we've seen people have who are the most dedicated
Mhm.
fans in the world, it's going to be hard to keep up with that. I mean, it's going to be hard, you're right, to make it all these games, but I mean, I feel like next year, the college football year, is going to hit us right in the face. Doesn't Georgia play Clemson?
Next year, I'm not sure. I
I
don't know
thought
what
they
Georgia
Georgia
has
in the
on the
class. I saw
19th.
some scale. Maybe I'm wrong on the years, but I feel like they are. And
I can look it up.
I think we're going to get into the mush. I think we're going to get into it right away. I think we're
Well,
going to.
teams had gotten aggressive or more aggressive with the non-conference scheduling under the previous auspice of what conference play was going to look like. Now, with the radical shift of the
Yeah.
last 12 to 18 months, you've got these non-conference games that are out there still. Look at Alabama, Ohio State, Notre Dame down the road, trip to West
Hey,
Virginia, I think
you think
coming
those
up.
get canceled?
I think it depends on if these leagues go to 9 conference games. I
I
think
just
that's
think it's going to
probably the
be
bigger
hard.
question. If the SEC goes to 9 conference games, I could see that. But you're right. Georgia does open with Clemson in
That's a
Atlanta
that's a
next
heck
season.
of a starting. I mean, we're going to
Yeah.
kick this season off next year, and we're going to ride it, and it's going to ride us. It's going to be like riding the 100-foot wave, so to speak. Your favorite show, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing some kind of, we do the SEC ACC basketball tournament. I
Yeah.
think you could do, if you want to get rid of all these non-conference games, you want to, the 1-and-1s with Ohio State, FSU, everything. Just do a conference, match up the conferences, and let's go and see what it's about. It's great with basketball, right? Bama's playing
I want to
Clemson
see that
tonight.
with the SEC and the Big Ten.
I would
That's
love
what I
that.
want
I
to
would
see.
love it. I'd love
Because
to
we
see.
already get some of it with the ACC because of South
Sure,
Carolina, Clemson,
absolutely.
Florida,
Yep.
Florida State,
Georgia Tech. Yeah.
Georgia Tech. I want to see the SEC and the big. I
I would
love that.
love it. I mean,
Yeah.
you'd love to see Georgia at Ohio State, Bama at Michigan, or vice versa. You remember the year Penn State came to Alabama and
Mhm.
they went back and forth. That game was to the walls. I went to that one, took the family, could barely get out. They were so excited to be there for that game. But yeah, these people that thought football was hard to watch this year, wait till next year. Wait till next year.
Jamie also asking how long until the championship Saturdays for conferences are gone for extra rounds of playoffs. Look, as long as the money's right, they're gonna try to have the best of all worlds, man. And I can
That's
promise
true.
you, ESPN didn't just write the check they wrote for the SEC coming up without the SEC championship game as a part of that.
I don't
I mean,
think anything when it comes to sports, I don't think anything's off the table right now. In the NBA, they are playing an in-season tournament.
yes,
Like did you ever expect to see that? Now I
no,
love it. We went to, a couple of weekends ago, we went to see the Pelicans. Friday night, we went in-season game. They got this bright purple floor. We went back Saturday, they got the normal floor. So they're going all out. They got different uniforms, they got different courts and everything else. So I think it's possible that we see more of a basketball type situation with the scheduling and the crossover. But you're right. If they can play the football playoffs, the conference, the non-conference, they'll do it
yeah,
all if
they'll
they
play
can.
23 games. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll pass. They're going to pass the NFL at some point.
Remember when we were worried about the length of the season and the impact it would have on the student athletes? Yeah. It
We
seems a
do
long
not
time
care
ago.
about them
That's
anymore.
also back when we had 11 regular season games. Then we went to 12.
And now
Then
here
we
we
had the
are.
conference championship games. Then we had a 2-game, 3-game playoff, a semifinal, final playoff. Now we're going to 12 teams. Yeah.
Look, I'll be honest. I love football. I think a lot of us do. I don't just watch Alabama. I think if you love football, you're excited for what's happening right now. There's definitely going to be people on the short end probably when this Final Four teams is announced. It doesn't seem it's going to fall where it's a clear 4. So you're going to have some teams made, angry, and that's the reason they're going to 12. I still thought 8 would be the next step. But we just get right on to 12. I'm not surprised. One day we might look up, there's a 64 team tournament. We're like, I hope Alabama makes the Final Four in football, Sweet 16.
Went 24-7 and won it all. Played 31 games.
Travis, do you remember that year?
Oof. That one might push me out to the pasture if they go to something like 20 football games.
I might go straight basketball if this comes up.
Hey, let's talk some basketball, Tim, as the Alabama men's team is set to host Clemson. You talked about an ACC SEC challenge. Got it tonight as a part of that one. Crimson Tide coming off a trip to the Gulf Coast that saw them go 1-1, split of games with Ohio State and Oregon. In those contests, Alabama scored 81 and 99 points respectively. Nate Oates, though, will tell you, hey, we gave up 91 and 92, which he doesn't like so much. Clemson comes into this game tonight at 5-0. Haven't really seen the Tigers take on top competition as of yet. Did get a win over Davidson, did get a win over UAB. But what are you expecting from this Alabama team coming off the weekend?
Yeah, the Oregon game, I had to go back and watch after, that night after the Alabama football game.
Yeah.
But the Ohio State game was a little concerning. I'm not concerned about this team, honestly. I kind of know that. But I do worry they were a little bit beat on the boards. I think this team's going to be a lot of how do they shoot the ball? How much do the guards play? You don't have to have Patrick Ewing, a dominating big man, to win the NCAA tournament. You got to have some active live bodies. But when you get in those wrong matchups with the big bruisers, you could have a little bit of troubles with Wagyu, Pringle, and those guys right now. But I do think this team shoots well. Estrada, shout out. Sears came back with a really good game. And again, I like the schedule. I did not expect to hit the SEC undefeated. So them losing a few games isn't a surprise to me. They've got a murderer's row. I did think they had a chance to beat Ohio State, but I knew Ohio State was going to be rugged in the middle, and they were.
It was good to see Rylan Griffin get it going against Oregon, wasn't it?
Yes,
had 5 turnovers in that game, but he finished with 17 points. And you really need him, as we saw against Ohio State down the stretch of that game. When he gets opportunities to knock down shots, he needs to do that. We saw more of that against Oregon.
I don't know if it's just finding his role with this team, similar to what we said last year, but he's a talented guy. You can see it in his shot. I mean, this isn't a guy that should be struggling like that. So I just think he's got to take that mentality of I'm going to go get mine. Build off that last game, 17, being a little bit more aggressive tonight. That's what I'd like to see. And I mean, obviously Clemson will be a competitive team. They don't have any real tough games so far. They had a nail biter with UAB, for instance, and they played some of the same type teams Alabama played early on that they blew out. But they also had a tough game against Davidson, that old sneaky Davidson team.
Man,
they're always talking
a nightmare about. To guard.
Yeah, you can't trust anybody named Davidson.
They run.
They will.
They run that system, man.
They run it.
Tigers do have a post, which kind of goes back to your point about Alabama around the rim. PJ Hall, 6'10", 240-pounder, preseason all-ACC choice, had 27 and 9 against UAB in the aforementioned meeting with the Blazers. And this is a Clemson team, again, against not exactly elite competition at this point, shooting the 3 at nearly 40%. So, again, it's a legitimate challenge in Tuscaloosa for Nate Oates' team.
Yeah, I think, again, we applaud his effort. I mean, what he does with the schedule every year, because he's scheduling some games he knows he has a chance to lose. I mean, he's not scheduling these schedules trying to get undefeated into the SEC play, but he also knows it's a chance to figure out. Tonight's another chance to figure out his 8-man, 9-man rotation as he heads into the SEC when it matters. I mean, these games matter. There's no doubt about it. All this matters for your resume down the road. But really, I think the first thing Nate Oates does, he takes a lot of pride in competing in the SEC, right? He takes a lot of pride in the fact
2 out of the last 3, yeah.
Yeah, he takes a lot of pride in hey, what'd you rank us in 1938? He knows what you ranked him, so he
keeps receipts.
He doesn't keep them in his wallet. He writes them on his hand. So you might be a tattoo there, 5th in 2021. he's definitely holding you accountable. So he takes a lot of pride in that SEC, a fiery league, and I don't even know what to make of the SEC this year. When you look, you got Arkansas struggling. When you look at the Arkansas team, you don't really expect them to struggle early on. Expect them to have talent. They had so much last year. Kentucky's doing better than you thought because they brought in basically a whole new roster. So the SEC's wide open, and I think a lot of teams are in the similar boat. And it's across the nation trying to figure out how many, figuring out your roster and everything that's going on, and figuring out who's going to be your clutch players and all that good stuff.
I think Alabama in the post, Tim, maybe this is what you were saying too, is going to be what it's going to be. I don't see them having an upper echelon post. And I say that knowing that Grant Nelson's 6'10", 6'11". To me, he's kind of more like a Brock Bowers of basketball.
Yeah.
He is 6'10", 6'11", and he can rebound, and he'll try to defend and help. But a lot of this is going to be team-based for Alabama in terms of rim protection, shutting down driving lanes. They're going to have to communicate. They're going to have to step in.
Try to keep deny.
They're going to have to committee rebound, which I know they probably don't like as much because that could limit their ability to get going in transition.
For all intents and purposes, Grant's an NBA small forward, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, he, the height went out the window back with Kwame Brown, who was committed to Florida, went number one. Height went out the window then. That was a guy the NBA tried to plug in the post, and he was a small forward. I covered him in AAU. And I think since that moment, I wrote a story a long time ago called Kevin Garnett Burned Basketball. And it was a cheap version of no big guy wants to play in the post, and I don't blame him because he can sit on the perimeter and make jumpers and look great. He doesn't have to catch all those bows that you're used to seeing. So the game changed so much. But Nelson get in there and battle. I think that is team defense, keeping him out of getting, trying to deny the ball, trying to, press that guard. Don't give him an open lane to get to easy pass. But they'll have problems. They'll run into guys with bigs. Tennessee's got some bigs. Tennessee's a good team with 2 losses. When I'm looking at the SEC standings,
Tennessee went out to that Maui Classic, which was a Sweet 16.
And that was literally
or Elite 8. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what that run that Alabama faces, those 3 teams in a row. Creighton,
Arizona, and Purdue.
So that again, you're right. That's an Elite 8 type deal. Tennessee ran into that. They've got a couple losses. Everybody's got some losses except South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State. I don't know who all they've been playing. I know Texas A&M's a good team. They've had some active games so far, and Kentucky's another one. Tennessee, but we got
Florida Atlantic got Texas A&M over the holiday weekend. Florida Atlantic is still legit, by the way.
No. That game, that was a heck. Yeah,
that was right. A hell of a game. That was a high-level pro game. Watching.
Yeah, when you look at those schedules, if you don't watch a game, sometimes you just think Texas A&M had a bad game. No. FAU, they play ball.
They are still that team.
That's another nightmare. That's the thing about basketball. I've got some of my friends who follow basketball, but they don't really follow basketball.
They follow basketball like football.
Well, they say stupid stuff like, how you lose to Davidson, they only have a football program. I'm like, what the heck does that matter? They might lose in tennis and they don't have
That's
football.
How you lose to them. That's all they give a damn about is basketball.
All the NIL money went to the basketball program. Yeah. I mean, that's what – but they always like, how you going to lose? Hey, if they lose tonight, they'll say, Clemson had a down year in football. How are you losing to them in basketball? So
let's get into the roundtable mailbag. How about that? You ready to do that, Tim? We got your guy Tuscaloosa. Okay. Tuscaloosa's getting it cranked up right out the gate. He says, say something mean about Auburn's beat writers. Tim, I can say this with 100% honesty. I don't know any of Auburn's beat writers. I guess, well, maybe one, but I've never had an issue with him. And that's in 20 years of this with BOL.
Look, there's Jeffrey Lee has been a friend of mine for a long time. We worked together back in the day at Rivals at Auburn. There's that, you hear the love, hate. Alabama's got a hate towards Jeffrey. I catch some flack over there because of it. Those guys are friends of mine. I talk to them rather regularly. They're Auburn, writers. I don't really
Tim, you're blowing kayfabe. You're blowing kayfabe.
For me, I know, people, I'm friends with a lot of the guys in these networks, not because I have to be. If they're guys I hate, I just don't associate with them. But a lot of these guys I do know, they're friends. They work hard. You don't have to the thing about it is anything I say, I mean, I can say right now, Julio Jones is one of the best wide receivers in the SEC. And 3 websites will rip me a new one. You know, of course you think Julio's the good one. You're a Bama homer. I get it all the time. I get it in messages all the time. So of course you're never going to agree with the way Rusty's angle at Georgia or Shay's angle at LSU.
Yeah, now I know Shay. I know Rusty.
Yeah, those are 24/7 guys. We're a little bit out. Back in our Rivals days,
They're the real deal. Yeah.
Well, Rivals was more of a bunker. You know, we were like in a little club. You know, like you had to pay. You couldn't read every site. We'll go to 24/7. You can read every site just like you can here. So now everything you say is magnified, but I don't have anything mean to say. If I have it mean to say, I just text them.
Tuscaloosa also asks, and we just addressed this, I think, what is Bama basketball's biggest weakness on defense right now? I know it's easy to point to the post, but I just think continuity and familiarity too. Talked about communication. I think people forget is this is largely a new team. And where that's likely to show up more as far as being connected and cohesive, Tim, isn't that more on the defensive end maybe than even the offensive end?
Yeah, I feel like the other teams are getting open looks more than I expected. You know, like there's a breakdown, and you see anytime you see an open guy and 2 guys looking or pointing at each other, you've got you've got a little bit of communication issue, and that's some of the things you're working out. Again, you have a lot of newcomers on this roster, and that's what the preseason's for, the early games and everything, to figure that out, how to communicate. And we talk about it with Jalen Milroe, but it's the same for anybody in any sport. Experience is everything when it comes to this. Talent's obviously got you there, but the experience is what's going to take you the next level along with your work ethic.
More Tuscaloosa. He says, I haven't been keeping up with UGA, but I understand they're down some playmakers. Any update on injury status of those guys? Well, we talked about that too. Brock Bowers, Lad McConkey. Been difficult for Georgia to get those guys together on the field at the same time in 2023. Here's the way I'm approaching it, Tim, and I'm sure Nick Saban and that coaching staff is too. I'll believe either or both of those guys aren't playing Saturday when I see them in windsuits at kickoff.
Obviously, those I know. I'm not as familiar with Lad McConkey, but I'm guessing he's very similar to being the underdog. This is a guy like 2-star guy, didn't have a lot of offers, kind of an afterthought when he committed. So he's probably got some dog in him that if he can play, if I can walk, take me up, put the cast on it, I'll play. I imagine he's a tough kid, and we know what Bowers is. We know that he's going to do whatever he can to play. That guy, he could have easily laid up. He's a first-round draft pick, right? He had an injury. Yeah, he could have laid up and said, hey, I'm done. We've seen people do it. And he didn't. He had surgery, came back as soon as he can, trying to win an SEC championship and a national championship. So I agree. If they can play, they will play. And I would expect to see him until you don't see him,
Yeah, if you don't see him at kickoff, that's when I would believe it. Batman checking in here in the mailbag. I have watched the Iron Bowl all my life, he says, and remember all the crazy games in the 80s with Bo over the top, wrong way Bo, the kick, the Tiffin kick, etc. Does it seem to you the past 14 years have seen the intensity raised to a level not seen in our lifetimes? If so, what is next? The intensity level of the Iron Bowl. I think on the field, it's the same as it's ever been. I think maybe, Tim, because of the internet, social media, the things we have in our life now that we didn't have when Tiffin was good from 52 and 85 and those type of plays. For me, anyway, that's where probably the biggest difference is.
I think like the intensity of the actual game and Jordan Hare is at a next level. I think it's
okay.
Well, I just like how competitive are those games, I guess is what I mean.
Right.
In Tuscaloosa, has there really been a close game while Nick Saban was there?
Well, that comeback game,
yeah, look how intense. Yeah, if it's a close, that's a brutal one. That was, she hadn't even said that. You and Charlie Potter messing up my whole damn week. I think when you look at Auburn, I feel like most of those games are relatively close. So you got a crowd in it for 60 minutes. In Tuscaloosa, you've seen Alabama get ahead a few times, and it's kind of just, and a lot of times the fans aren't rolling. You're not going to roll to Tuscaloosa if you're 3-8 and Alabama's 11-0. You know what I mean? You can find something else.
But I can remember some Iron Bowls going back to maybe the 80s where you had some homicides.
Oh, dude, there was 3 years
after,
in a row. Yeah, there's 3
and
years
that
in a row.
wasn't
So
that wasn't during the internet era. So
I remember the father
yeah,
shot the
yep.
son-in-law, or vice versa,
Hmm.
over that game. Now go back to earlier in the show where I watch it on my back porch smoking a cigar by myself. I'm guaranteed I can't shoot anybody. So I'm just saying, I'm not a role model, but sometimes I do things you might want to emulate. That's all I'm saying, people. Don't shoot your wife, don't shoot your daughter's husband. All I'm saying. But yeah, 3 years in a row, definitely intense. But you're right. I think the social media aspect of the username, not your real, it's not Facebook. Facebook's usually your name or you and your wife's name if you've been a naughty boy. But they have the ability just to say whatever you want whenever you want. I think it's just, you see it in every sport. Of course, I'll tell you what I wouldn't play and have social media is soccer. They are really mean to their soccer players.
They are
So,
brutal.
I mean, I look up and
To
I
the
don't know why.
managers too. Oof.
Hey, I'll tell you something else. If you play sports, shut your DMs, dude. Why are you letting strangers pop in and holler at you?
Kevin Durant's got burners.
Dude, Kevin,
He's all the way in.
Kevin's funny on Twitter at times. He's a little sensitive, but he's definitely funny at times. But yeah, I think the social media's raised it. I mean, people are mad about everything. They feel safe, you know what I mean, from their mom's basement yelling
That's
at
true.
you.
Behind aliases too. Doesn't hurt.
Yeah. So I mean, it's easy. And I get the frustration. I mean, I yell. I've never been a guy not to respect the game. I respect everything that the guys do to get to Alabama and Georgia and Auburn and Tennessee. I know how much work they had to do because I've been around athletes or seen them my whole life and followed this for so long. But I do agree at times they can make plays that constitute you yelling, but I would not tweet at them.
Thrill 2K1, our pal, checks in here in the mailbag. Who do
Or
you
just
see?
buddy.
Who do you see as the X factor in the game Saturday for both teams? What do you think the most key stat will be to determine the outcome, besides the score, of course, he says? Well, we talked about some X factors as far as players. I think some of them are pretty obvious. Others, for the Alabama defense, again, how you go about defending Georgia on a down in and down basis with the matchups in mind that they can put you in, especially if Bowers is good to go and close to at least 100%. So, you start thinking about guys like Caleb Downs and all the different things he might be asked to do, Tim, on the defensive side, from playing safety, from maybe playing star, from playing the money position in the dime. I think back to even that 2020 SEC championship game. People forget about that one with Florida, man. That was an absolute shootout in Atlanta. And remember how Alabama had to deal with Kyle Pitts in that game? And they tried like 3 or 4 guys and it was still tough. I think Caleb Downs may be asked to do some of all of that on Saturday.
Yeah, I will say, Brock's not as much of in a basketball body as Kyle was. It's a little bit. Kyle was just a mess.
6'6" too, or so.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. He's an NBA small forward body. Bowers is a big, strong kid. Was he 6'3"? So a little bit different. You're dealing with there. So 2 different guys, but just as effective. But for me, the guys on offense, I'm kind of looking for a guy like Kobe Prentice to have a game. I mean, they're going to know Burton, and that's going to be a little personal. You certainly don't want him over there talking trash to you when he scores. Bonds, we know how good he is. He's had several big plays this year, but Nye Black's a sneaky guy for me, and so is Kobe. Kobe's had his moments. He's got the talent. He could be a guy to work himself open. On defense, I think it's the inside backers. What are you going to do to take away a lot of those runs? Are you going to fill the holes, find the gap, fill the hole, get the ball, keep them, 2nd and 7, 2nd and 8. It's a lot different for Georgia 2nd and 8 than it is 2nd and 4. And that's for every team. So that's the keys for me, the inside backers, and, find a third guy. And obviously the stat to me is turnovers, right?
Well, turnover margin, you would think, although Alabama was +3 last week and needed a 4th and goal from the 31 to win. Now, 2 of those turnovers for Alabama were end of half, end of game sort of throw up interception. So it was +1, but that other one, that muff punt, that type of play in a game like this, Tim, could loom large.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's the one thing you want to protect the ball. I think, Nick Saban did a good job of communicating to the fan base, like about Jalen, is like sometimes you just give up on the play. I think Jalen has so much confidence in himself, which is great, and I love it. But also, I think at times you're just like, I'm beat, throw it away. And we've seen that. We've seen a little bit more of it, just throwing it away and giving up on the play. But then again, the guy that never gives up on the play, he doesn't give up on 4th and 31 either. And
No.
that mentality, the thing about Jalen that was insane, if you watch that slow motion video of him eyeing down the defense, he looked as calm as he could get.
Yeah.
It was bananas. He was as calm as he could get. And again, that was a frozen rope. One of the best throws in the history of college football is what it was.
Yeah, I'm not always confident that Jalen's going to do the right thing still, but I am confident that he's confident that he thinks he's going to do the right thing. And at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
Dude, that's it. You got to have that. I mean, what else can you do? Is every time you make a mistake as a quarterback, if you get down on yourself, and again, we watch so much football. I mean, I understand quarterbacks make mistakes. I watch the NFL. And those guys stink. There's some bad things happening. I saw Joshua Dobbs.
What about Thursday night football last night?
Dude, I'm telling you, going to NFL a tangent, how did the Bears get more primetime games than the Chiefs? They don't every Thursday, Sunday, and Monday. I don't understand who said.
Because this was Justin Fields' year, Tim.
I mean, Josh Dobbs missed Jordan Addison so wide open.
4 picks.
Like you can't be serious right now.
Boy, it is crazy too in the NFL, getting off topic a little bit, how quickly the stars dim for quarterbacks in that league. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, people were just adamant about how did teams overlook Josh Dobbs. Then he throws 4 picks, and I hear the Vikings coach talking afterwards that we're going to explore all options.
Yeah, let me tell
you the quarterback position. That's all it takes in that league, man.
I'll tell you what that is with the new quarterback. You got that new car smell, and it's similar to like back in the day when a foreign pitcher would show up in Major League Baseball, right? And he'd have a screwball or some pitch no one had ever seen outside of Asia, and he was unhittable. And then they started watching the film. They figured it out, and he's back in Tokyo before you know it. Now, some of those guys like Fernando Valenzuela's one, top of the arch and down. But those quarterbacks, you don't know how to scout a quarterback you've never seen, right? You don't know how to scout Joshua Dobbs, right? You haven't really seen him, and now they know, and now there's tape, and now you kind of know
what you're getting. Yeah.
I mean, he started for the hey, when you trade
started for the Titans late last year in a game that could have gotten them into the playoffs, I think, against my Jags.
Yeah, I know the Cardinals were starting them and they were doing okay. When they do that and trade you, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thrill 2K1. I'll go with third down conversion / red zone touchdown conversion in this game. That's what I'll go with. Both these teams statistically really good on third downs. Alabama has been very good prior to last Saturday, really, in red zone touchdown conversion rate. Had to settle for a couple of Will Reichard field goals at Jordan-Hare. And so that's where I'll go. I'll go in those areas. Team that kicks the most field goals probably loses the game Saturday. Tex Tider, as we wrap it up here in the mailbag, Tim, he wants the odds on Caleb Downs shutting down Brock Bowers.
Yeah,
you probably could get good value on that, because if Bowers is at or close to 100%, I don't see you totally shutting him down. But, and I guess Tex Tider's probably joking with us a little bit here too. I'll say this: the way that you handled him, especially in the SEC championship game 2 years ago, you would take that right now. You would take that type of performance against him, because one of those plays in the middle of the field, that was the Jordan Battle pick 6 in that game in Atlanta a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I just think they get Brock the ball so many creative ways. You're not going to shut him down. No. I mean, a lot of his stuff is yards after the catch or rushing. I mean, it's not like he's just running a streak down the sideline. Short pass, he's just hard to tackle. He'll get 12, 14 yards on you. I know he's probably kidding, but yeah, I think with Bowers, you just give him what, you don't want him to have his best game ever, right? You don't want him, you just want to keep him to Brock Bowers normal level and then take your chances with everybody else.
There you go. There is your roundtable mailbag on the latest edition of T. Watts and TR right here on the YouTube and podcast homes for BamaOnline.com. Tim, anything else before we get out of here?
No, I'm excited. I mean, we have the coaches hitting the road next Sunday. Well, they'll start planning.
recruiting.
I think they'll actually go. Some of them will go places to be there Monday morning early. So I think you'll have some guys recruiting. It's all-time pitch. Got a couple. You got a couple of official visitor weekends coming up. You got coaching changes. Billy Napier had let 2 guys go.
Boy, it's already cranked up, dude. You got some of these coaches. If you want to know who's on the hot seat for 2024, look at some of the coaching changes that are already being made to staffs around the league and college football.
The sacrifices.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got a lot of coaching changes. The portal was busy the last couple of days. I got a theory. I think we go through this. The portal's going to be busy, but I think a lot of guys, it seems like more because it's busy now. Because why? We were expecting them to go in the portal on the opening day, but these guys are rushing to say, they're the people lining up Thursday night for the Black Friday sale 3 hours early. These guys are getting an early jump on the portal. And prayers up for every college coach figuring out who to take and who not to take. And, we saw Tyler Van Dyke. There was rumors, he got 7 figures to go to Miami. He's in the portal. Max Johnson, who's a pretty good football player if you give him time, is now headed to his 3rd school. So there's some quarterbacks. There's a lot of rumors about Riley Leonard at Duke after Mike Elko left. So we're going to see a lot of quarterback action, which will be,
Now you wonder if Riley Leonard goes to A&M with Mike Elko.
Yeah.
And does maybe Max Johnson pair up with a Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State? These head coach quarterback pairings, right, that you could see play out will be interesting.
Yeah, if you're a first-year college coach, you're definitely trying to get your quarterback right.
That's
Elko's a prime example.
Hire staff later. Yeah,
because Will Rogers has left Mississippi State, so you're losing your starters now. Aggies do have the Connor kid who's talented coming back, so that has to factor in.
Yeah,
he's a good football player.
He is. If he can
They
stay
just got offensive line issues. Max Johnson was just brutalized at times.
He was. Well, we appreciate everyone for tuning in today. We certainly appreciate everyone that hangs out with us at BamaOnline.com. We do have our special right now, Tim, at Bama Online for new subscribers. We got a couple of them, actually. We've got a YouTube special, and then we've got our current special where you get a month of BOL for $1, new subscribers only, right there at BamaOnline.com. So if you're not a part of our family, BOL family, you need to do that today.
Absolutely.
All right, Tim, we'll do it again next week.
All right, brother. See you guys on the round table.
For Tim Watts and Andrew Bone yesterday. I forgot that one.
Yeah.
Travis Reier. Travis Reier, thanking you for joining us right here on T Watts and TR. Until next time, so long, everybody.